Hey everyone, Gene here. Welcome back to the Evil Within. This is an Akumu, no upgrade, no locker, no flashbolt, no freeze bolt playthrough on the PS4, and we're on chapter 7. So this chapter is a lot different than the last few. This mostly is made up of a new enemy type who is a lot different than the Haunted. So I'm going to explain how to deal with them, their different properties, and all that stuff when I get to them. It's interesting because even though they're a bigger and stronger enemy, they're actually easier than the Haunted. Because on this difficulty, everything kills you in one hit anyway, and they come in fewer numbers and they're slower. They're actually less of a threat despite their higher health. Their attacks are easier to dodge, I think, and you can trap them easily just as you can with the Haunted. It's just that some things don't work the same way. But either way, this chapter and the next chapter are mostly that enemy, the alter egos, and I think are two of the easiest chapters in the game. But even though they are two of the easiest chapters, I think they're two of my favorite. They just have such a good atmosphere, and there's just little downtime and a lot of good fights again and stuff like that. This chapter also ends on a really good boss. If you're familiar with the imagery at all in this game or have seen screenshots or anything, the boss of this is kind of like the game's mascot, so to speak. So it'll be pretty familiar. And again, that fight's not very hard either. I'd say it's probably the easiest boss in the game, but it's still a good fight. And there's a lot of ways to go about it and has some cool aspects to it. So coming up here, it's the first encounter with the enemies. As you can see, it starts pretty quick. There's Haunted, and it's the only ones in the chapter, I believe. And there's only 3 of them. There's 2 in this room, and then there's 1 down this hallway to my right. I'm not even going to bother dealing with him because I could either shoot him with the rifle or a harpoon bolt, but I decided that wasn't worth it, so I just let him come to me, and then he gets caught in the shock bolt as well. Because the shock bolt, if you lay it down, it just stays there forever. But once it hits that first enemy, it's on a timer. So whatever the upgrade level of the weapon is, that's the timer it's referring to. At base level, it has a 4-second timer. So it's 4 seconds from when it hits the first enemy is how long it's going to stay active. So you can use that to your advantage if enemies are in a close proximity and you lay it down. They're all going to get caught in it within a few seconds of each other, so it's worthwhile if you want to use it. Whereas if enemies are far apart, you probably want to use a flash bolt because a shock bolt won't stay active long enough for it to affect them all. And a flash bolt, especially when it's upgraded, lasts longer than a shock bolt. So just something to keep in mind. Right there was a locker key. I decided I wasn't going to pick it up because I'm not using them. So there was no point in me picking it up. Although I'm still picking up green gel. I don't know why I'm doing that. There's no point. So up here, we're coming up to the first, I guess, non-linear part of the game where you can go in 2 different paths. You can either go on the left or right in this room coming up, which is kind of cool. You get to make a decision. I always go left because that way's a little bit more simple, I feel like, and I'm just used to going that way. I don't think that this game being linear is a bad thing at all. I think it's a good thing. I think that linear games are good if their focus is the mechanics, which I believe should be a focus of most games. So I think this game, being as linear as it is, does it a lot of favors. It let the level designers and enemy designers and combat designers really fine-tune the encounters to be just really what they wanted, and there's a lot of depth to everything that goes on in this game, so I don't see that as a problem. But anyway, here's the alter egos. This first part's weird. From what I can tell, if you shoot this enemy and get close, it initiates this weird spike trap. So that's what I do. I think if you just shoot it, it's not enough to initiate that trap. So I think you have to do both. And right here, so you can burn the alter egos just like the Haunted, but for some reason I missed. He wasn't quite close enough to the center of the hitbox, so I just blast him with the shotgun. It's honestly a very easy tactic for these guys, is to just blast them in the head with the shotgun. Right here, you can see I kicked the door open and it knocked him back. You could use the door as kind of a trap, so you can lure enemies to the other side of a door, and then you can just kick it open. It'll give them enough hit stun. You can do something to them. A lot of Haunted will fall over when you do that, so you can burn them with a match. Also, that first enemy that I failed to burn, did a stomp on him, and it killed him instantly. So what's weird is that these enemies, they die in one hit to the melee stomp, which may seem really weird, but I think there's a good reason for it. They don't get knocked down by normal means, so if you hit them with a shock bolt, they're not going to fall over like the Haunted do. They're just going to get kind of stuck in place, and you have some time to like shoot them or do whatever you want to them, run away, whatever. They also don't get knocked down from being hit with a door, so they don't get knocked down as easily. So I think the idea is that in return, that when you do knock them down, you get to get a free kill off of it. So if you knock down a Haunted, which is easier to do, you get to use a match, which costs a resource, but an alter ego is harder to knock down. So when you actually do it, you get to kill them kind of freely, just with a quick stomp, which I think is a really awesome touch. It kind of makes going for the knockdowns a really big decision. Like, it's harder to knock them down, but if I do it, I pretty much get a guaranteed kill. So you knock them down basically just with explosions. So the dynamite, the explosive bolt, grenade, all that stuff will knock them down. And once they're down, you can stomp them. They usually take a while to get up too. They're not like the Haunted where they can just spring right back up. They're usually on the ground for a couple seconds at least. So you have a big window to just stomp them. And it's about the quickest animation Sebastian has in the whole game, so you're pretty much never at risk of not hitting them. Now, at this part coming up, I'm going to kill 3 alter egos, which are more like bigger mid-tier enemies with very few resources. So he's going to walk by this dynamite. I'm going to shoot it. He's going to be in that mid-range of its hitbox, so I'm going to melee stomp him, and he's going to die. I'm going to get this one with a match, so that's 2 down. And then this one's already lying down. If you sprint over to him quick enough after dealing with the second one, you can get him while he's on the ground. So I took care of 3 of those enemies with 1 bullet and 1 match, which is pretty great use of resources, I think. So the thing with the dynamite that I haven't touched on yet that's really awesome is kind of the way its distance to the enemies changes its function. So obviously, if an enemy's close, it does more damage. I already said that in a past video, but if an enemy's close, so let's say a Haunted is really close to a stick of dynamite and you shoot it, the Haunted's just gonna get blown apart. He's just gonna fall into like bits like they do in this game. And that's gonna be great because it's gonna kill them instantly. But at the same time, the body will be gone, so you can't use that body to burn another enemy. Because in this game, when there's a corpse, that corpse is actually it's an opportunity to use it as a fire. So you can light the body on fire to light another enemy on fire. So in some cases, it might be better to actually have the Haunted at a little bit more distance from the dynamite when you let it go off. That way you can knock that enemy over, and then with a little bit of planning and spacing and all those things, you can burn that enemy along with another enemy or 2. So again, not only is there decision making involved in, do you want to use that dynamite for parts or for an immediate trap, there's also there's varying ways you can use it as a trap. You can either do it when an enemy's really close for a kill, in mid-range for a knockdown and maybe multiple kills, or you can either do it at long distance and it's just some hit stun, which obviously you probably wouldn't want to go for that, but that's still the option if the other 2 fail. So again, there's a lot to think about. There's always a lot to think about when you see these traps in the levels. So that's the first route cleared. That one's a lot easier, I think, just because it's a lot more straightforward. I like the parts with the poison coming out of the vents, and you have to turn the cranks. I always like I like stuff like that in games where it's timed, but you still have enemies kind of blocking your path. Kind of forces you to be efficient. So here, this room is. I don't remember if there's a statue in here or what. I know there's some kind of secret with this lever, and I don't remember what it is. Yeah, this is a video guide where I don't even remember some of the stuff in this game I've played a million times. It's just funny when you focus so much on one aspect of a game you like, you just kind of like forget about other parts of it. Obviously, I'm so invested in the combat mechanics in this game that I'm like, secrets and statue locations and map fragments. Yeah, I don't know where any of that is. Although I do want to collect all the map fragments and do a run with the weapons you get from that. I unlocked them back on the PS3 version back in the day, but I haven't got them on the PS4 version because I just hate playing through a game and collecting stuff and using a guide while I play. It's just obnoxious, I think. It just kind of kills the pace of the game for me. I just want to sit down, not have anything else on, and just play the game and not have to worry about stopping, not having to worry about if I'm missing anything. I just like to play it and just experiment and get through challenges. Stuff like that just bothers me anymore. And you could see I was kicking around that alter ego because it was fun and I had nothing else to do on the elevator. See, like right here, that's two alter egos back to back who are just crawling. So they're free kills. You just go up and stomp them, they're dead. So I'm going to disarm this, even though this is a good trap to use because there's going to be several enemies who come out of these doors, and you can easily lure them back over there, but there's this big spike trap in the middle of this room, so I'm going to go ahead and use that instead. And this part's interesting because this is one of those parts where the crossbow can kind of be tied into the game's level design. So let's say I have the shock bolts all the way upgraded. I could lay down a shock bolt right in front of those doors as they swing open, and then another one a little bit in front of it to where the two hitboxes on them don't overlap so that they get to reset. So like let's say I had it all the way upgraded and I lay down a max shock bolt right in front of the door, which is a 6-second duration, and then a couple meters away I do another one for 6 more seconds. That's enough time for me to turn that crank all the way and just run through those doors. So instead of having to do all this and use more resources, which I'm going to have to use because there's two enemies that get stuck over here, instead of having to deal with all that, I could have just shocked both of them, laid it down before they even appeared, and then just ran away. Right there, I try to get both of them with an explosive bolt, but the one in the back is not moving, so I decide I'm just going to run away. But anyway, it's kind of cool that as much depth as that weapon has, the crossbow, you can even look at it in a level design standpoint, because most action games have kill rooms, which are the rooms where you just go in and you have to kill everything before you can proceed. I think that's how basically every game does it. I think the only modern action game I can think of that doesn't do something like that is like the Souls games. But most other games do it, and I've never had a problem with it because if a game's focus is its combat, and I stuck that guy to the wall, which is pretty funny. If a game's main focus is its combat, I mean, is it really bad that the game is making you do it? It's kind of like if you're playing a strategy RPG or something and you select the level and you have to complete the fight. I mean, that's the point of the game. Or something like a platformer, if you have to go through the obstacles or the part of the level that requires the platforming, is that really bad? I mean, no, because that was the focus of the game. But either way, I like that this game utilizes stuff like that as well as these like long animations that don't have iframes, like opening these doors, and you can bypass them if you set up traps and things like that. So again, just adds to the variety of things. So here's a little scripted chase sequence kind of thing, and we're going to fight the Keeper shortly, spooky safe. This is a repeated boss fight, so you fight the Keeper more than once in the game, but every encounter is different, and I would say it's definitely different enough to to warrant those extra encounters. I think all the fights with him are great. You're going to fight it again in Chapter 13, and then a double fight with them in Chapter 15, and they're all awesome fights. So, and this first one is, in my opinion, really easy, but it sets you up well to do the next fights, and it has a lot of cool elements to it. So when you come in here and you break Leslie out of this cell, there is one shotgun shell sitting in the corner. So it's very generous of the folks at Tango to give us one shotgun shell before the fight begins. But when the fight does start, I'm actually going to use explosive bolts for two reasons. One, explosive bolts, like I said, are the main boss killer in this run, aside from sniper rounds. Also, most enemies in the game, the Keeper does succumb to a lot of hits done from explosive bolts. If you stick him with one, he will have like a separate animation where he kind of kneels over after he gets hit, and that gives you a ton of time to keep shooting him. So I'm going to stick him with one right when the fight starts, because his charge up sprint actually takes a second or two, so I know that there's enough time to just stick him with one. And then one shotgun blast and one handgun bullet, even at base level, is enough to take him down from there. But that's not the end of the fight, because there are safes lying around this whole arena, and every safe is basically a spawn point for him. So run ahead through here. That crank, or that valve on the table, you're going to need, but not right now. So right here, you're going to come to this first valve, and you're just going to turn it. Him rising in the background is meant to scare you, but he's not going to catch up to you before you turn this. So I'm going to turn it all the way, even though he's walking towards me. He's always going to use that wind-up melee attack. Spin around in a circle, you can grab a harpoon bolt lying against the wall there. And then same thing here. This is really easy. You can just set up a trap for him, and there's more than enough room to get away from him. And again, he's one of the slower bosses in the game. He's actually quite easy to get away from. So he's one of the bosses where if you put an explosive bolt on him, you don't really have to worry about him catching up to you, because he doesn't have those quick lunging grabs like the other bosses do. Not only that, you know where he's spawning, and his spawning animation takes a few seconds, so you have plenty of time to just screw him over before he even gets up. So I wanted to stick it right there in a specific spot, because I wanted to get away first. And then I didn't plan that shot very well, so I had to use a sniper round, which I really didn't have to use. I probably could have just used the handgun, because every time he spawns, he doesn't have very much health. So at this part, you're going to come over here, and he's going to knock the valve off like a jerk. So you have to run back to that valve I talked about on the table and grab that. He's going to follow you all the way back here. And along the way, he's probably going to throw down these traps that he has, these wire traps. They're a lot like bear traps, but you can actually use them against him. So if he steps near one, you can shoot it and he'll get snagged in it. So right here, my plan is to throw a grenade and do that heavy amount of hit stun that I was talking about that you saw at the beginning of the fight, but I completely overshot it. So I think, well, he's far enough away, so I'm just going to have him follow me, and then I'm going to lay down a shock bolt, and by the time he catches up to me, he's going to get caught in it, and I'll be getting away from him. So I'm turning the valve, and there he is, surprise. So I didn't think he would come that way. So that branches out of that first room, and I thought he was just going to follow me all the way around. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the trick of using an explosive bolt for the heavy hit stun. He's going to get knocked back, and then he's going to knock down for a second. I'm going to put a shock bolt in the doorway so there's no way he doesn't miss it. And even this is barely enough time I bought to get through here. Because the shock bolt, he's just going to come right out of that shock animation in full swing. So this is another really cool tidbit. So when bosses and bigger enemies get shocked, they stay in the animation that they were in. So if you shock a haunted or a doppelganger, they're just going to fall down to their knees, give you an opportunity for a match throw, and they're going to rise up. and their AI is essentially going to reset. But when you shock the Keeper or other bosses like the Amalgam and stuff like that, so he was in a sprinting animation when I shocked him. He didn't collapse to the ground or anything. He came out of that shock sprinting exactly like he went into it. So keep that in mind, like right there. I probably should have placed that shock bolt back further since he was sprinting. That wasn't very much distance. He got right up to me. So once again, just another layer and another detail to add on to these things in the way the crossbow works. So the shock bolt definitely does not work across the board the same on every enemy type. But pretty easy fight overall, especially if you take advantage of traps. There's not a whole lot he can do to you. That about wraps this chapter up. If you like this video and want to see more like it, please like and subscribe. We'll be doing chapter 8 in the next video, and I'll see you guys next time.